Hey everyone, welcome to locking in your Toeside carves with the open body Toeside. In this video, we'll cover the easiest and most reliable way to lock in your Toeside carves for good with the open body Toeside form. The open body Toeside form is a posture that you can learn to get clean, deep, and consistent Toeside carves every time. No lengthy intro, so let's get right into it. First of all, let's lay some groundwork by making it clear exactly what carving is on a snowboard. A carve is a type of turn where we use the shape of the side of our board to draw out a thin, sharp, and circular pencil line turn in the snow. If we look a little closely at our board, we'll see that the sides aren't completely straight, but instead are curved in a wide arc. We call this arc shape the side cut of the board, and the metal parts are the edges of the snowboard. Carving involves balancing on this side cut and allowing the snowboard to turn through its own shape. Here, take a look. If we pick up some speed and balance ourselves on our board's side cut by tipping our board onto its edge, the shape of the side cut digs into and starts slicing into the snow. And since we have some speed, our board keeps cutting through the snow using its curved side cut in the same path and draws out a sharp, pencil line thin circular turn. Congrats, we just performed a carve. Let's take a closer look and see what's left behind a carved turn. What's left is a sharp pencil thin cut left by the curved metal edge of the snowboard. A good carve produces a sharp line just like this from start to finish every time. Okay, so now that we know what a carve is exactly, let's get into what you can actually do to lock in your Toeside carves. Enter the open body Toeside. The open body Toeside form is a specific body position that gives you consistent Toeside carves literally every time. It's what I use for all of my turns. Every Toeside carve that I dig stems from the open body Toeside form. So, here's how it works. Stand up normally on a flat area for practice. The open body Toeside form involves a few motions that have to be performed all at once, but we'll cover each part in order. First, we turn our shoulders and stomach 90 degrees so that they face the nose of our board. Pretend there's an arrow pointing straight out from the stomach and turn our shoulders and stomach so that the arrow lines up with the nose of our snowboard. There, now our upper body is facing towards the nose and our shoulders and stomach are perpendicular to our board. This is called having an open upper body. Second, we shift all of our body weight onto our back leg, then bend our back leg. We're going to bend our back leg so much though, to the point where we're going to have our kneecap touch down on the snow. Our whole body is going to get low, and beneath us we're going to allow our board to tilt up on its edge. All the while we're still keeping our shoulders and stomach rotated. We're straining our body a lot at this point, but just think of it like a yoga pose. Third, we turn our front leg slightly outwards in the same direction of our upper body. Alright, now we're going to hold this pose. This is the open body Toeside form. Yeah, holding this definitely is a little awkward, especially if we're doing it for the first time. And if we're being honest, this yoga-esque pose doesn't really seem like much on flat ground. But watch what happens when we perform the open body Toeside form on a hill. If we start by going straight down a bit to get some speed, then settle into and hold the open body Toeside form like we practiced on flat ground, we perform a perfect Toeside carve. What I'm doing right now is called a U-turn, a type of carve turn where we point ourselves straight down the hill to get some speed and hold the open body Toeside form. The board rolls onto and locks into its edge and carves across the hill, and even carves uphill a little bit as we lose our momentum. The shape of the whole turn looks like a U or a hook, which is why they're called U-turns. Now it's your turn to try. Practice the open body Toeside form at home or at your local resort and try out some carved Toeside U-turns of your own. Once you're completely set with carved Toeside U-turns and can pull them off consistently, practice Toeside carves together with heel side carves and chain them together, and voila, you're carving! The open body Toeside is reliable for sure, but there are a few tips and tricks that you can use to bring out the open body Toeside form to its fullest. The first tip is to use your maximum range of motion. What I mean by that is that the open body toeside form only works well if we move our body correctly. This might sound like a water is wet moment when sitting down and watching this video at home, but you'll find more often than not that you'll accidentally fall out of the form when you try the open body toeside form out on the snow. If you're working on your toeside carves and find that the open body toeside form isn't working for you, it might be because you're limiting your range of motion unintentionally. Don't worry, it's only because you're just not used to holding your body in such an unfamiliar pose. Here are some areas where you could look at and why they matter. When we turn our shoulders and stomach towards the nose of our board, they have to be turned to 90 degrees. If we only turn our upper body about this much, which is about halfway there, or even turn our shoulders and stomach to line back up with the board, like when we stand normally, which is called a closed body position, we'll almost always lose our balance and fall into the turn when we try to carve. So we have to keep our upper body open. Keep those shoulders and stomach turned towards the nose of our board as much as we can to maintain our balance. When we bend our back leg, we have to really drive our kneecap down to the point where it's touching the snow. The reason why we bend our back knee at all is to make our board tilt up on its edge, so that we can carve. The more we bend our back knee, the higher the board tilts and the deeper and better the carve. And conversely, if we don't bend our back knee enough, our board doesn't edge up all the way and we get no carve. So we make sure to bend our back knee to the point where our kneecap hits the snow to get our board high up on its edge properly. So as for our shoulders and our stomach turning and our back leg bending, make sure to use the maximum range of motion. The further the range of motion you can hold these parts of the body in the open body toeside form, the more balanced you'll be and the deeper and better looking the toeside carve. The second tip is to use your shins, not your ankles. This is a little off track, but do you remember when you were first learning how to snowboard? You probably did some toeside falling leaves, where you went down the hill only on your toe side and slid side to side across the slope. To dig the toe side of your board into the snow, you use the muscles in your ankles to dig in your toe side. It's not clear what I'm talking about when just looking at falling leaves by themselves, so take a look at this comparison. Look at how I use the muscles in my ankles to stand on my toes. These ankle muscles are the muscles you use to dig in your toe side when you practice falling leaves or even do normal toe side skidded turns. However, when we're carving on our toe sides and we place our body weight into our back leg, we do not actively use the ankle muscles. I can't stress this enough. You don't need to use your ankle muscles when you're doing your toe side carves. Why? What usually ends up happening is that because we're so used to using our ankle muscles to dig in our toes on our skidded turns, we accidentally end up using those same muscles when we try our toe side carves and end up skidding our turns instead. This usually happens in the beginning of the carve turn, where you're not yet used to placing your weight onto your back leg and instead try to support yourself with your ankles. It's like using the wrong tools for the job. You don't need to use your ankle muscles for toe side carves. This issue seems kind of small, but this is probably the most underrated tip in the whole video, and you can't ignore it. Don't use your ankle muscles on your toe side carves. What's the fix then? Well, instead of using your ankle muscles, all you need to do is press your body weight into one area, your boots. Ignore your ankles completely and just press your weight into your boots by pressing into your shins, letting the tongue of your boots flex hard and take all of your weight. There is a huge difference when we place our weight into our boots instead of using our ankle muscles. Take a look how Sean performs this proper toeside carve. When he bends his back leg, he's using his shins to push all of his body weight into the tongue of his back boot. When he does this, the board is actually allowed to roll onto its metal edge like it should, instead of skidding out sideways like in skidded turns, and the board's edge cuts into the snow and starts carving right from the start. It's worth mentioning that cranking boots and bindings up super tight is good for carving, because the tightness of the gear will affect how much and how quickly the board tilts up on its edge. The tighter the boots and bindings, the more responsive the board will be to any movements made. If you're still skeptical, here's a direct comparison of two toeside carves. On the left, Sean is going to use his ankles to try and dig his board's edge in, and on the right, Sean is just going to press all of his body weight into his shins and bend the tongue of his boot as he bends his back leg. Watch closely. Do you see the difference? On the left, Sean starts skidding immediately in the beginning of the turn because he used his ankle muscles to try to support his body weight, by accident. Again, this isn't a carve, it's just a skidded turn, because he actively used his ankle muscles. On the right, all Sean is doing is pressing his weight into his shins and the tongue of his boots absorb all of his weight. The board rolls onto its edge and starts carving immediately at the start of the turn and produces a clean carve all the way through, a huge contrast to the failed Toeside carve. So bottom line, don't use your ankles at all when you're trying to learn the Toeside carve. In fact, ignore your ankles completely. This tip is really subtle, but it makes all the difference once you get it right. So, make sure to use your shins to press into your boots instead of using your ankles to skid out.
Nice job!
Alright, those are all the tips I have for you for the open body Toeside form. Now at this point you're probably already practicing your carves, but not sure if the turns you're making are actually carved turns, or if you're making mistakes and are skidding out. Well, it's easy to tell if a turn you performed is a carve or not, just look at the trail that you created behind you. Skidded turns have the rider spread the snow out behind them, producing a fat spread of snow, like you would spread peanut butter on your morning toast. Carving, on the other hand, always leaves behind clean and sharp pencil line trails, no exceptions. A sharp circular cut in the snow from start to finish is an indication of a good carve. If you see any waviness or fat sections in your line, that carve isn't successful, but don't worry, you can always just use what you learned in this video and try again. Now, as for trying again, if you're still having trouble getting your toe sides down with the open body Toeside form, do some good old video analysis. Take some videos of yourself, or ask someone to film you while you ride down from an external point of view, and use the video to analyze yourself, or have a more experienced rider or coach look at the footage and help you out. The great thing about carving is that carving is all about body positioning, and has very little to do with body strength. This means any mistakes or areas of improvement can be fixed really easily as long as you know what mistakes you're making. Of course, I made this video to help with that, but ultimately, you can always ask experienced riders for help, including me. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. This is an extension of my How to Carve on a Snowboard Part 1 video, which talks about the open body Toeside form too, but digs into other parts of beginner snowboard carving. That video is a lot longer, but has a lot of insights that you might like if you were interested in this video. Click on the card above to check it out. Either way, that's all for this one. Good luck with practicing your carves, and I'll see you in the next video.